Well, kia ora team. Hey, in this short video, I'm going to take you under the hood with some of the features and formulas and functions that I've used to create this student planner in a Google Sheet. So it's got three parts to it. It's got a goal setting dashboard with some gauges. It's got a habit tracker with some checkboxes. And then it also has a weekly study planner. All right, let's dive in. And the first part of this spreadsheet is an ACE dashboard. ACE stands for attendance, completion, and effort. So as you can see here, we've got three gauges. So that's actually comes in the chart part of Google Sheets. And they are determined by the values in these cells right down here. So if a student is going to enter in some values, so let's say in their attendance, they're currently sitting on 75%, the gauge moves up to 75%. And they can fill in the rest of those. Let's completion. Let's say they complete only 60% of all their work, and their effort, they're a bit slack, so they've only given themselves a 45% rating. So all those gauges are a nice visual way to show the student where they're at in tracking their progress. So let's take a little bit of a look under the hood of these gauge graphs. So if we go into the three dots and we edit the chart, we can see where it is pulling the data from. So pulling the labels from cells A4 to A6 and the values from C4 to C6. So that's just from the table down below. Okay, but let's go to the more interesting part, which is the customize. Now, some basic ones on the chart style. We can change the chart border if we want. Maybe we want to disappear that. We can change the background color to whatever color that we want. But it gets a bit more interesting when we go down to the gauge. So it gives you a minimum and maximum value. So in this case, we want the maximum value to be 1 because we are looking at a percentage. So that's what the gauge starts at and all the way around to what the gauge finishes at. And then you've got these range colors. And so these three colors are what you see around the edge of the gauge. So I've set the minimum, the red, to go from 0 to 50% or 0.5. I've set the orange to go from 50% to 0.7, and then the green to go from 0.7 to 1. And you can obviously change these values. Let's say to get in the green, you've got to be 80%. Now we can see that little gap of white, so I might need to adjust the orange color there. Now I've also chosen to copy these gauge charts, and I've got another section below which is about their goals. And so you hear that saying about moving the needle, and so what are the target metrics that they want to achieve? And just like in the top one, they can type in their values and the gauges all update. And the next part of the habit tracker and goal setting is this sheet here. So on here, if we want to achieve those goals, we want the students to develop a series of habits. Now we can list the habits all down here, and I'll put some emojis in those. And the first one that I've given is to make your bed. And I've actually given a link to that famous speech by Admiral Bill McRaven about, first thing getting up in the morning, making your bed, starting to win the morning, having ticked off something for the day to lead you on for a day of success. Now these are all editable, so maybe instead of 30 minutes of study, they can update this to 45 minutes or an hour, do the dishes, show some gratitude. So they put in the goals that they want to get through on the week, and also the amount of times they want to do it during the week. So they encourage to make their bed 5 times during the week. And looking at study, maybe they want to do 4 sessions of 45 minutes. They want to do the dishes twice, and maybe they only want to exercise 1 time a week. So now that that data is in there, as they go through the week, they can use these check boxes to tick them off as they complete each habit. And again, putting in tick boxes, a great new feature is just from the insert menu and the tick box. And it's a very easy way for students to be able to just tick their way through as they complete each task or each habit. And as you can see, they have a small Sparkline graph in the progress bar right beside their habit tracker. So let's just spend a bit of time looking about how this works. Okay, so let's go under the hood of this Sparkline. So we start off with obviously the name Sparkline as a function, and a normal one is all these criteria here. So if we break those down, obviously the chart type is a bar. We've got a maximum value of B5. Now if we look at where B5 is, go down the B column and 5, it's coming from this cell here, which is the target number of reps per week. So whatever this is, that's going to be the maximum that it's out of. And obviously we've got the color and it's green. Now the next part of it, so we want to get it as a percentage. So the bottom part of that fraction is this number here, but the top part is all these things added together. So the COUNTIF function counts the number of times this checkbox has been ticked. And if it's ticked, it comes across as a true value. So in this case, the fraction is going to be, if I count up the ticks, 4 ticks, and it's going to be divided by 4 because that's the number of reps per week. Obviously that's 100%, so that is why the green bar is showing all the way. Okay, so the next cell across is this completion column, and as you can see, if we go into the cell, we've got this very long embedded if statement. So let's just walk us through how that actually works. So what we want to do is for it to come up with a word about whether they've completed their goal. So as you can see, the first part of the if statement is it's a count. All right, so it's counting if C5 to G5, the number of times it's true. So that's basically the number of these tick boxes here. All right, so if that equals whatever's in cell B5 here, okay, if it equals B5, then the person's met the number of times they've set that goal for them. So yeah, they have completed their goal. And then because we've got 3 options, we want to also know that if it's greater than B5, so if they've done more than what they set out to do, then it's actually going to say smashed it. So let's just have a look at how that works. So now that they've done 5 out of 4, this is now changed to smashed it. And then the last thing that we see is if it's none of those, so if it doesn't equal the number of times they've set their goal, if it's not greater than the number of times of what they've set their goal for, then it's just going to turn into not yet. So if we see that, clear all these tick boxes. If we go below the goal, it's a not yet. If we meet the goal, it's a year. And if we go above it, they have smashed it. Now you also might see that the formatting has changed. So that is some conditional formatting. So if we go to the format menu and we go to conditional formatting, here I have set up some rules. So to dive into this a bit further, so if we're applying those rules to a certain range, and in this case it's applying those rules to the cells from I5 to I9, which is basically this completed column here. So in those cells, if the text starts with an N, so N for not yet, then here is the formatting options. We're going to have a yellow background, and then it's also going to be italics. And that changes for each of those rules. So if it begins with a Y, it's going to be highlighted green, and if it begins with an S for smashed it, it's going to be a purple highlight, and then also in bold. And the last part of this habit tracker that I want to show you in is we've got this gauge graph here that as you tick through the habits, you can see that the gauge is going up. So this is a measure of overall. And hopefully you can see that once it gets above 80%, the emoji has changed. So now we've got a hand clap. They've done more than 80%. And if we keep going up that percentage, we're up to 100%. But if we do even more than what we set out to do, we've got this lovely confetti emoji. So how does that work? Well, I've actually hidden the formulas behind this graph. So if we move this graph to the side, and in A2, I've got the name of the gauge. So that's what I'm going to call it. And so if I go across to cell B2, which is currently under the graph, then you can see that I've got a count if here. So the count if function, that's counting all those cells, all those tick boxes there. Okay, so that's the number of times the boxes be ticks, and it divides by the sum of cells B5 to B9. Okay, so that gives us the percentage. And if we look over into the cell with the emoji, so what I've done here is, again, I've got this embedded if statement. So it's an if within a if, because I want to have 3 outcomes. So if that overall percentage is great, or is less than 0.8, is less than 80%, it's going to come up with this still thinking emoji. If it's greater than 1, so it's greater than 100%, it's going to have this confetti emoji. And if it's anything else, i.e. between 80 and 100%, it's going to come up with this hand clap emoji. And what I've also done in the cell here is I've made the text really, really big, so that the emojis come up nice and big. So you can see here that the font size is 100. And the last part of the study planner is actually what they are doing with their time. So we've got a weekly planner, day of the week, and then we've got the times down in these columns here. So the idea is they're making a timetable for the week. So this first one that's in here is for them, when they wake up and make their bed. And if we go down to the instructions, they do it sequentially. So the first thing is they add in their weekly routine. So time to bed, meal times, time to school. So they might go to school at 8 o'clock each day on the bus, so bus to school. And again, rather than typing in bus to school in each of these cells, they can merge that one cell across all these other cells using the merge tool over there. And even further, they can give it a flash color by changing the fill. So we go through here and they put in all those different things that normally happen each week. And again, making it nice and quick by using the merge cell feature, and maybe making it even pretty, putting in some colors. And then after they've put in those normal routines, they can add in their current commitments, so work and sport. So maybe on a Wednesday night, they are playing underwater hockey. Great sport that is. And so again, they can merge those cells vertically to show that that's the time that they are playing underwater hockey. Maybe they've got some work on Sunday. So again, we can merge those cells and highlight them. And then after they've done those two things, hopefully it's fairly obvious when they have time when they can block in their study skills. So maybe they'll decide that they'll do some study here on Thursday, and then maybe even, shock horror, a bit of study on Saturday. So not only have they set themselves a goal based on the metrics of where they are at, they've identified some habits that they want to develop and track over the week, and then they've finally put that into a weekly study plan. So hope you found this useful. If you've got any suggestions for how this sheet can be improved, put it in the comments below. Thanks for listening.